It's a holistic model of religious conversion, an overview of existing tendencies. So the idea is a holistic model of conversion. You know, it speaks for itself, is that conversion is not just something of the head, but it involves the whole person. You could say in Adventist understanding, it involves the head, the heart, and the mind. Sorry, the hand, head, heart, and hand. So in other words, conversion is something that involves the will to act, but also the mind. And then, of course, the heart is the seat of emotions, and actually also often seen as the seat of the will. This is obviously a very important thing, because it would be, you could say, an agreement with Adventist philosophy, or you could say Adventist anthropology, where the view of a human being that we hold. And we would have a presentation that is reaching out to be more than a half an hour session. Dr. Poniatowski will lead out in an exploration of this area. After the presentation, this presentation, we will have at 4:30. So we will have a half an hour break, and then at 4:30 we will have a panel discussion with two persons in discussion that is moderated by a third person, and the people are Petros Bahadur and Oscar Sindo. They both are knowledgeable about Islam, and the moderator is Samuel Lumwe, who is also a person who's knowledgeable about Islam. So the focus tonight in this panel discussion will be then on Islam and conversion. After the panel discussion, which ends at 6, we will have, as I mentioned, a lounge, where a virtual lounge, obviously, where you're invited to join, and where there's an opportunity in a more relaxed atmosphere to ask your questions and to hear the presenters that have presented today answer your questions. Well, I would like now to transition to the presentation of Felix Poniatowski on a holistic model of conversion.
And I just also describes them as Felix Poniatowski, and I'm presenting a topic that is entitled Towards a Holistic Model of Religious Conversion, Overview of the Existing Tendencies. When we speak about the model of conversion, we usually refer to a theoretical framework or a set of ideas that tries to explain the process of religious conversion. It means the process when someone changes their religious beliefs or affiliation. And there are many different models of conversion that were suggested by scholars. And usually their purpose is to provide different perspectives on the factors, stages, and motivations involved in the conversion process. Today, I would like to discuss 5 different models that were suggested by scholars, and these are Loveland and Stark model, brainwashing model, Rambos model, Go-Orens model, and phenomenological model. Actually, there were some other models that are not included into this research, and I just wanted to focus on the models that present the conversion as a sequential description of the stages. And it is worth noting that there are some other models that fit this criterion, but they have been omitted. For example, Tippett's model also describes the conversion as some sequential steps, but it was omitted because it was integrated into the Rambos model. Before starting a discussion of different theories, I need to make some comments regarding the terminology used to describe different models. Scholars employ varying names to refer the same conversion models, and it can create some confusion. For example, Loveland and Stark model was called by the advocates of this model world savior model, and sometimes it is also called social drift model, but usually it is referred to as a Loveland and Stark model after the names of the people who suggested it. Another model is brainwashing model that is sometimes used as coercive persuasion model, and sometimes it is called thought reform model. So the first model that I would like to discuss is a Loveland and Stark model. So this is one of the first attempts to articulate a comprehensive model of conversion that was done by John Loveland and Rodney Stark in 1965. Despite some limitations, this model has emerged as a classical framework for understanding conversion from a sociological perspective and has served as the foundation of many other subsequent models. Loveland and Stark analyzed the process of conversion to a religious group called the Divine Precepts. And this group existed in the United States in the 1960s. They conducted a study of this group and its members, and based on the data that they collected, they developed a model of 7 factors that they found necessary components a person must come through in order to be converted. And these are those factors. The first one, a person experiences a strong and long-lasting tensions in his or her life. And this tension or this problem or crisis person encounters a religious group. And after that, some emotional bonds are being developed between the convert and the members of the group. At the same time, the emotional bonds with other people outside of this group are progressively diminishing, and also attachment to alternative beliefs is reduced. The final step is a person exposed to intensive interaction with the group members and actively participates in the life of the group. Loveland and Stark said that these 7 factors are sequential. They also presented this model as a funnel-like structure that systematically reduces the number of persons who can be considered available for recruitment, and also increasingly specifies who is available. Also, they said that these 7 factors are sequential. They noticed that it is an ideal model, and in real life the order can be different. The first three conditions they explain as predisposing characteristics, and the rest four are the factors that lead to actual conversion. And according to Lofland and Stark, the tension in the life of the person doesn't necessarily lead to a conversion. And they mention some other ways how this tension can be alleviated. For example, a person can find solution in psychiatric, political, and in religion. And only if a person finds a religion as an appropriate solution of his problems, the conversion may take place. And what is important that the main emphasis they placed on the emotional bonds that must be developed between the person and the members of the religious group in the process of conversion. They even noticed that if such bonds are being developed, the conversion may happen even if a second person doesn't completely agree with the beliefs of the group. And on the contrary, the conversion is unlikely if the bonds were not developed or the bonds with the people outside the religious group are stronger. This model has been criticized by many scholars, but also many scholars conducted researches to prove that model is really vital and effective. Some criticism came from Luther Gerlach and Virginia Hine, who analyzed the dynamics of the Pentecostal and Black Power movement in America at the same period of time, and they concluded that neither social, economical, nor political crisis, nor any other conditions of deprivation can explain the growth of the religious movement. And what they noticed, that sometimes some congregations were not growing, although they were located in the area that was characterized by the economical deprivation. And on the contrary, some congregations were growing, although they were located in the good established community without major challenges. And what they noticed, they said that the key factor for the process of the conversion is the pre-existing relationship between recruiter and potential convert. So what they wanted to say that they noticed that in majority of the cases the conversion took place because of the connection, some relationship between a convert and the members of the religious group. Actually, Lofland and Stark also said that the bonds or socialization is important, but they placed it not as a pre-existing key factor, but they placed the development of the bonds in the later period of the conversion process. Although Gerlach and Hine's thesis might be attractive, it is not able to explain all the full spectrum of cases. So maybe it explains the situation about the Pentecostal and Black Power movement in 1960s, but it cannot fully explain mass conversion to new religions in the post-Soviet countries in the 1990s or the mass conversion in various African countries. In all those instances, numerous new religious communities emerged following relatively brief evangelistic efforts led by a single preacher. Such approach to evangelism makes the establishment of close relationships between converts and members of the religious groups almost impossible. So the next model that I would like to discuss is the brainwashing model. And in 1970s or 1980s, there was a big controversy and debates among the scholars about which model is more reliable, brainwashing model or the model suggested by Lofland and Stark. The main differences between these two models is that Lofland and Stark model present a convert as a major player in the process of conversion, who actively seeks a solution to the tension in his or her life. However, what if an individual does not undergo significant tension that drives him or her to seek that drives him or her to seek relief in religion. Instead, a person may be a passive recipient of influence exercised by the members of the religious group. And the brainwashing model considers conversion as a result of aggressive proselytizing efforts undertaken by members of a religious group. According to this model, successful conversion relies on a religious group's ability to establish a systematic program that influences and manipulates its members. Proponents of this approach often view such religious groups as deconstructive cults, aiming to alter the behavior and mentality of converts through psychological and peer pressure tactics. For example, Margaret Thaler Singer, who is a prominent advocate of the brainwashing model, characterizes this process as invisible social adaptation. While proponents of this model acknowledge that certain individuals may be predisposed to cult conversion, particularly those facing personal crisis. But also they argue that in general anyone can be vulnerable to becoming a victim of a deconstructive cult's activities. And one of the main ideologists of this model is Robert J. Lifton. He is an American psychiatrist and author who is well known in the field of psychiatry and psychology, particularly in the study of the psychological effects of war and political violence. And he spent quite enough time in Hong Kong in 1950s, and he studied the influence of communist regime in China on the political prisoners. And he published a book that is entitled Thought Reform and the Psychology of Totalism, a study of brainwashing in China. And in this book, he examined how authoritarian regimes and cults use various psychological techniques to manipulate and control the thoughts and beliefs of individuals. So he suggested his themes that are necessary for the conversion. And the first one is milieu control. So it means that cults often control the information their members have access to, and they try to control not only access to the outer information, but also to intrude into the inner world of an individual, asserting control over their internal communication and thoughts. The next theme is mystical manipulation. Cult leaders often cultivate a distinctive environment in enveloping their institution in a mystical aura, in an effort to convey the belief that both the cult organization and its members have been chosen by supernatural forces. This strategy serves to bolster the group's ideology and the authority of its leader. The next one is demand for purity. Cults emphasize rigid moral standards and demand strict adherence to their belief systems. Any deviation is seen as impure or sinful. The next one is confession. Members may be required to confess their past sins or transgressions, making them vulnerable to manipulation and control. The fifth one is sacred science. The group's ideology is often presented as the only valid truth, discouraging critical thinking and alternative opinions. The sixth one is loading the language. Cults may develop their own jargon or terminology, creating a unique language that separates members from outsiders and reinforces group identity. And the seventh one is the doctrine of a person. Individual members are expected to subordinate their personal needs, desires, and identity to the group's doctrine and leader. And the final one, dispensing of existence. Cults often claim that only they possess the exclusive path to salvation or enlightenment. rendering outsiders as less valuable or even non-existent in comparison to the group's members. Margaret Thaler tried to combine several descriptions of the brainwashing model, and she combined Shane's stages that are presented at the right column. And Shane actually said that in order to convert a person to a cult, 3 stages must be, the person must come through 3 stages. The first one is unfreezing. So it means that the ideology or the worldview of a person in the normal stage is fixed or frozen. So in order to convert a person, his worldview must be unfrozen. That is why this stage is called unfreezing. And after that, some changing can take place. And after the changes took place, after that we have refreezing again, so that the worldview is closed again and it cannot be changed easily. And Margaret Singer actually combined conditions that she suggested with themes suggested by Lifton and stages suggested by Shane, and tried to present it in the chronological order. And of course, when we speak about the brainwashing model, it has been very much criticized. And the first point of criticism is that the definition of cult used by the proponents of the brainwashing model is actually very, very broad, and potentially it encompasses almost all forms of religious movements or groups. For example, Margaret Singer defines a cult as a group that exposes their recruits and members to organized psychological and sociological persuasion processes designed to produce attitudinal changes and to establish remarkable degrees of control by the group over these recruits and members' lives. And almost every Christian denomination or church can fall under this definition, as nearly all engage in some form of outreach to attract individuals from outside their faith community. Almost all seek to influence converts to align with Christian moral principles and often maintain a degree of oversight over their members' lives to ensure compliance with the denominational standards. And additional criticism is about the using of the terminology. For example, they use terminology brainwashing, and it is not a scientific terminology because it cannot be described scientifically. Another criticism is about the assertion that the converts lack free will, so that they cannot resist to the conversion process. And one more issue of criticism is about a methodology that is used, because very often the data is collected only from those individuals who are former members of the cult or religious group. And usually these former members have a negative feeling about it. So that is why the collected data and its interpretation might be skewed. But some scholars actually said that this brainwashing model is not completely wrong. At least it explains the mechanism that is used by the religious groups to attract new members. And for example, Long and Harden, these two scholars, proposed that these two models are not mutually exclusive, and they advocate for a more encompassing model that can integrate both models together. And to prove this, they tried to apply both models to the analysis of the process of conversion in the Unification Church. And they found that the brainwashing model and the Drift or Laughlin and Stark model are actually brothers under the skin. And they suggested that the theory that can integrate both models is the socialization theory. And I need to tell that many scholars agreed that the conversion model or conversion theory can be understood as a subset of the socialization theory. But on the other hand, the socialization theory also cannot explain all the aspects of the conversion. Why? Because socialization theory just explains how a person socialized or enters a new community or new social group. And in this case, for example, if a person finds a new job and he needs to come to to be socialized in a new community, in this case, it doesn't mean that the person has to change. Some transformation must take place in his inner world. He can just become a member of the new group. But conversion implies some transformation that must take place in the inner world of the person. The next model is Rambo's model. It was suggested by Louis Rambo in 1993, and he incorporated some other models into his model. And this model has several also stages. The first one is the context, and the context is not actually a stage per se, but it is rather the overall environment in which changes take place. And this includes various factors like historical, religious, social, cultural, and personal elements. These factors collectively shape and impact the conversion process. They can either facilitate or restrain the process of conversion. So this is the first stage, the context. The next one is crisis, and it is very similar to the tension stage of the Loflang and Stark model, when a person encounters some problem in his life. And the next stage is the quest. And the quest stage describes the situation when the potential convert is actively seeking solution to the problem, and he is actually seeking the meaning in his or her life. And the next stage is encounter. So the same stage we can find in the Lofland and Stark model, when a person finds or encounters the members of a new religion. After that, we have interaction stage. At this stage, the member and members of the religious group and potential convert engage in more complex and extended discussions about the new religion. And this phase may involve adopting new beliefs, trying new rituals or behaviors, cultivating relationships, and gaining theological insights. And after that, we have commitment. At this stage, the individual makes a significant decisions, solidifies new commitments, and may participate in rituals that confirm their status as a member of new religious community. And the last one is consequences. The consequences stage is an ongoing assessment of the effects of the new religious option. The potential convert continually evaluates whether the new religion remains relevant and viable in his or her life. Actually, what we can say that this model is very similar to the Lofland and Stark model, but Rambo adds context to describe the environment where the conversion might take place. And also Rambo adds one more stage, consequences, that explains the dynamics in the life of the converted person and possibility to be reconverted if the new religion doesn't meet his or her expectations. The next model is conversion carrier model, or it is also called Goerens model. And actually a long time ago, Richardson and Stewart described the social situation in 1960s in the United States as a virtual supermarket of ideas. And this supermarket offers many different solutions for resolving the personal crisis, and people can choose the one that fits them the best. Furthermore, they said that people can try different solutions in a serial fashion. So it means they can try one religion. If it doesn't work for them, they can choose another one and they can choose and they can change many different religious solutions. And this concept, not long time ago, was developed by Henry Goren, who suggested his own model that outlines 5 distinct levels of an individual's engagement within a religious group. And these models are, steps are pre-affiliation, affiliation, conversion, confession, and disaffiliation. So the first one, pre-affiliation, depicts the inner world and social environment of the potential convert at the moment of the first encounter with the religious group. It is a point at this point, a person must make a crucial decision whether to join the group or not. And basically, this level covers stages 1-4 of Rambaugh's model and also stages 1-4 of Laughlin and Stark model. The next one is affiliation. At this stage, an individual becomes a member of a religious group. However, the affiliation doesn't necessarily mean complete dedication to the group's way of life or substantial inner transformation. In other words, an individual at this level is a formal member of the religious community rather than an active participant. The real change of the worldview takes place at the conversion level when an individual is openly associated himself or herself with the group, and this association is also acknowledged by both inside the group and by outsiders. And the climax of this model is reached at the confession level, when individuals become active members of the group, engaging in missionary activities with the aim of reaching out to non-members. And this phase represents a commitment to the group's mission and values. And the final stage is the disaffiliation, that is characterized by the diminishing interest and involvement in the life of a group, possibly culminating in the complete abandonment of the group. Goren points out that the levels of involvement are not necessarily sequential. A person may jump over several levels, for example, from affiliation to confession, or from affiliation to disaffiliation, or the movement may occur in an opposite direction. Therefore, such model tries to describe the dynamic behind the process of conversion. The next model is Joshua Iadurai's model or phenomenological model. Actually, the author, Joshua Iadurai, the Indian scholar, doesn't call it phenomenological model, but because he is using a phenomenological approach, I would like to call it a phenomenological model. All the previous models predominantly approach conversion from either a social science or psychological perspective, often neglecting the significant factor of divine influence. Conversion is typically explained as a natural process triggered by various factors, and scholars are primarily concerned with identifying and studying these influential factors. However, from the perspective of those undergoing conversion, it is often experienced as a profound encounter with the divine. Iadurai's model has many common elements with the Laughlin and Stark model and Rambaugh's model, but it also has some significant additions. Iadurai identified 7 sequential steps in the process of religious conversion, and these steps are exposure, disenchantment, crunch, pursuit and test, hostilities, participation, and maturation. At the exposure stage, a person is being exposed to a new religion. It can be just a common knowledge acquired in school or due to interaction with the members of a religious group. At the disenchantment stage, a person is being disappointed with the religion of his birth that might be caused by many different factors. The crunch stage is very similar to the crisis stage of Rambaugh's model and tension stage of Laughlin and Stark model, when a person encounters some significant challenges in life. The pursuit and test stage is characterized by intensive search of the solution for his or her crisis and explore and test the solution offered by a new religion. This stage is similar to Quest stage of Rambaugh's model and Seeker stage of Loveland and Stark model. However, an important addition here is the test element. At this stage, an individual makes a decision about joining or not joining the new religious community. Also, at this stage, usually the encounter with the divine takes place. Yadurai calls it a spark. It could be an event, not necessarily an extraordinary one, but the convert perceives it as an intervention of deity in his or her life. The spark event can occur at any other stage, but what Yadurai emphasizes is that it is a key factor that initiates the transformation in the conversion process. But this element is missing in all other conversion models. The subsequent stage is hostility, and this is also a new stage that was introduced by Yadurai. Hostility is a component that only briefly mentioned by the authors of other models. During this stage, converts face challenges in the form of misunderstanding and controversy from their closest social circles. Hostility may escalate to the point of violence or even murder. Yadurai considers this stage as evidence that conversion doesn't occur solely due to stress, as conversion often introduces even more significant stressors into the life of the convert. The participation stage is the moment when a convert becomes an active member of the religious community. It is not necessary to become a formal member of the church through the baptism, but what is important for this stage is the personal transformation, acquiring of a new identity, and building close relationship with other members of the group. Yadurai placed the next stage is a maturation stage, and according to Yadurai, it is a lifelong process of transformation. He placed all steps in a coordinate system where the horizontal axis is the influence of agents of transformation. It could be church or religious group or even divine element. And the vertical axis is participation in religious rituals and practices. In such a way, he demonstrated that process of transformation and maturation depends on the level of socialization of the convert, horizontal axis, and participation in the basic religious practices like prayer and studying the Bible. On this, in this table, you can see all these 5 models brought together. And what we can see, all of them emphasize different elements of the conversion. And although they have some common elements, it is not so easy to find parallels between them because of the emphasis on the different aspects of the conversion process. Finally, what I want to say that while some scholars attempt to create comprehensive models that encompass a wide range of factors involved in conversion, others argue that such an endeavor is unachievable. For example, Kilburn and Richardson observed no single conversion type or conversion theory can describe or explain all the empirical findings which have emerged in recent years. But an attempt to depict the conversion process as a sequence or distinct steps is not entirely futile. Various models highlight different aspects of the conversion phenomenon, offering a generalized understanding of the process. While developing a fully comprehensive model may prove challenging, these attempts shed light on various facets of the conversion phenomenon and provide valuable insights. Thank you very much for the attention.
Well, we have heard an interesting presentation about various approaches to religious conversion. And Felix is right now available to answer questions. And I would like to see if anybody of the public has had the opportunity to present questions. Let me check. Okay, I have here a question. Religion affects the entire life, and religious life becomes a way of living. However, why do we continue to see misbehavior among the remnant, even among the church workers? If I quote someone, aren't we good in theories more than the practical Christian lifestyle?
Yeah, thank you very much for this question.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a very good question because really, if we believe in the transforming grace, the influence of the Holy Spirit, it must not be like that. But one of the models that I presented just recently, it seems to me can explain it very well. And this is conversion career model or Goran's model. And actually, he speaks about 5 steps. And the first one is pre-affiliation, affiliation, conversion, confession, and disaffiliation. So what is interesting, he doesn't finish this model, his model, with the maturation or being just a church member or member of the religious group. But he finished this model with the disaffiliation stage. And disaffiliation stage doesn't mean that the person completely broke out with the church or with the religious group. He may remain a part of the group, but his interest in the spiritual life or in the life of the church is diminishing very much. So it looks like he is formally a church member, but in fact, he is not church member. I mean, he is not a devoted church member. And that is why it is very logically that such a person can misbehave. Yeah, and I believe it would be interesting to continue this type of research, for example, and to develop even an instrument just to understand who is who in the church. Like, for example, what level of involvement different church members experience or practice in their lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe I could ask a question. When you look at these models, and especially Goran's model that you've just discussed, which of these models do you think would fit, for example, a European secular context?
Okay, so it's a good question. So I don't think that we can just say that any particular model can be attached or applied to a particular geographical context. I believe any one of them can be applied to a particular situation, maybe. And the issue is that all of them emphasize different aspects. For example, Goran's model speaks about the involvement of church members in the life of the church. And in this case, we can apply it, I believe, to any context, to African context, to European context, and to American context as well. Yeah, but maybe the results will be different in different contexts. And Yadura's model or phenomenological model, I believe it is like a good model because it takes into consideration the divine aspect or influence of the Holy Spirit. And this is the only model that I discovered that takes it into consideration, because all other models just consider conversion solely from the perspective of either psychology or sociology, or they try to combine these both approaches, and of course anthropological approach as well.
I see that another question has come in. Are the models specific to specific religious groups? In other words, that like Stark and Bainbridge, like you've quoted Stark and Laughlin, but Stark and Bainbridge did a lot of research among the Mormons, and they developed a theory of conversion based on that. So the question of this person is, did researchers study particular religious group like Stark and Bainbridge studied the Mormons, and what would that, I'm adding a little bit to this question. Would it be, like if you do a study of Mormons on conversion, would that be able to be generalized, the results, to other religious denominations, or will that be different?
Yes, different scholars studied different groups. Somebody studied Jehovah's Witnesses, somebody studied Mormons, somebody studied Pentecostals, or some other new religious movements. But almost all of them, they tried to generalize the results of their study to the entire population, let us say, like that. Of course, there are some interesting aspects, but it is not about the model, because I read about one interesting research about how what kind of people different churches try to attract. Okay. For example, one study was done on New Apostolic Church, Jehovah's Witnesses Church, and Simpson Pentecostal Church. And the results was very, very interesting. Like, for example, 46% of people who were baptized in New Apostolic Church appeared to lost their fathers. So the researchers made a conclusion that most probably this New Apostolic Church in their liturgy, in their theology, is more attractive to people who lost their fathers. And when they analyzed their theology, they understood that they make a special emphasis on the Heavenly Father in the liturgy, in prayers, everywhere. And that is why it can be an element that really attracts people who survive this kind of crisis in their lives. Yeah, and the percentage of the people who lost their fathers was considerably lower in Jehovah's Witnesses and in the Pentecostal Church. Yeah, so we can say that different churches or different religious groups might be more attractive to special groups of population. Yeah, but I don't think that we can just attach or apply one of the models only to one group. Even if we speak about Laughlin and Stark model, they this was a point of criticism because they studied only one group, divine precepts. So they didn't study in any other group, and they made their model just based on their study. Yeah, but of course they were criticized very much for some of the aspects. But on the other hand, there were many other researchers that tried to confirm that their model is really a working model and is a reliable one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I haven't seen another question coming on the screen from Q&A. I would encourage the listeners to do that. But in the meantime, I have a question. Well, we are now thinking about conversion in the realm of religion, but if you would, generalize it a little bit and say that we look at conversion in terms of worldview, and a historian of science by the name of Thomas Kuhn, he was thinking about what he called paradigm change in terms of like a conversion. Now, he had his own idea about what conversion is, it was not a rational process that he was so much considering. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit on this? You know, if scientists, and this is the idea, if scientists would actually also convert to a whole new way of looking at reality. And in
Yes.
that way, you could say the distinction between religion and science is much less radical as has been presented, like, for example, by persons like Karl Popper and what they called the Wiener Kreis, the Viennese positivists.
Yeah, so what I want to tell, of course, it is yes and no. Why yes? Because do you see, even sociologists, they try to present conversion as a natural process that actually can happen in any area. So you can be converted not only into the religious system, you can be converted like into Marxism or any other ideology. Yeah, or you can simply just, if you, for example, change the place of living and you move to another city, so you need to be part of a new community. You need to enter this community, and you also need to come through some sociological process of sociological adaptation or entering this new community. But on the other hand, when we speak about the religious conversion, we cannot deny the influence of the Holy Spirit, or how Yadure said, this divine spark. And this divine spark is something more than just simply people speak about in sociological models. So there is some force that convince people that they're sinners, that they need to be converted, and this is something beyond ability to study by psychological or sociological or any other kind of inquiry. So that is why I believe that religious conversion is different from any other conversion that we can speak about in the secular manner. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I have here a new question. What model would you endorse for church leaders to pursue in the context of Africa? What model of conversion do you think is suitable for this context?
Yeah, as I said, we cannot just choose one model because all of them can be useful in different situations. Okay, for example, Yadure's model is very good because it makes accent or emphasis on the divine element and divine presence. Yeah, but maybe it doesn't speak very much about what happens to the person after the conversion. Okay, he just leaves everything on the maturation step. But for example, the model, Goran's model, it says about possible disaffiliation, and Rambo's model also says about the consequences. So what will happen after the baptism, after the conversion? And according to those models, it could be like the person can go in two directions. The person can grow in the knowledge of Christ, in maturation, but the movement can go into a different direction through disaffiliation, when a person evaluates the consequences of conversion, and if at some point of time he is not satisfied with what he had when he converted, he can simply leave the church. So I believe different models can be applied to different situations. Yes, and of course, when we speak about brainwashing model, it's, for me, it's very deconstructive model, because it considers any religious movement as a kind of a cult, deconstructive cult. So in this case, I believe it is not like a good model that we can use. But on the other hand, it is a good way to discuss or to study different ways how the process of persuasion or process of reaching out can be organized, and how it is organized by different churches, and what kind of results they can achieve through different ways of proselytizing. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Maybe I just have one more question. You know, in the psychology of religion, you've had a number of authors also reflecting on religious change. So how a person goes from, let's say, you know, a non-believer to become a believer. And I remember that, for example, a person like Thomas O.D. was coming up with this idea of these breaking points. You know, this is a little bit related to what you mentioned also, is that there's a crisis in life. And that again relates to, you could say, Kurt Lewin. Kurt Lewin has actually had this model of change, which is also applicable to religious change, that says, 3 minutes, that says there is a time of being frozen, you know, and then there comes unfreezing, there comes change, and again refrozen. And then the idea is what causes a person to unfreeze, and then, you know, what Thomas A.D., even though he doesn't refer to Kurt Lewin, would say these crises in life, they cause a person to unfreeze and to be open to change. What would you say about that?
Yeah, this is one of the models that I presented, and it really says that there are 3 stages, or we can say even 4: frozen, unfrozen or unfreezing, changing, and frozen again. Yes, so in this case, but this model was presented by the people from the brainwashing model, and they simply believe that some manipulation, psychological manipulation, can create this, can open the person for some changes. Unlike them, some sociologists can say, no, it can be a crisis, and crisis can be provoked by many other reasons that this change might take place. Other people can say, on the contrary, that crisis is not the major reason for changes. And actually, this is the issue that must be studied again and again. And I believe this is one of the reasons why we cannot have one model of conversion, because there are so many different scenarios of conversion, and all of them can be unique, and none of the model can fit all spectrum of many different details that we might have. So that is why I cannot tell you exactly what it is that can cause conversion. Maybe this divine spark can do that, people can convert it.
We will have now a break for 30 minutes, and then we see each other again at 4:30. Thank you.